Have you ever dreamed of moving to the Swiss Alps, drinking some wine in a chalet, and finally writing that French mystery novel you've been wanting to do for so long?
Okay, Kyle. Or maybe you just want a goddamn break.
Well, you're in luck because sabbaticals, adult gap years, mini retirements are all on the rise.
But is that a good thing? We're going to talk about whether you should or should not take one.
Let's get into it. Kaila.
Kyle.
My favorite co-host.
I can't do the same to you.
So adult gap years.
Yes.
They're in vogue. They're in the zeitgeist. According to the reputable Pop Sugar, I read an article saying adult gap years are on the rise.
Yeah.
And it outlined how this is actually like taking off. People are really interested in the idea of sabbatical, adult gap year, mini retirement, like whatever you're calling it. The idea of not working for a while
sounds pretty great.
It's very appealing to people, but it is like, I've read more and more articles about it over the past year or so. Why do you think these adult gap years are popping into the zeitgeist?
Well, I think because everyone wants a break. I mean, I think that like makes sense. We've been working so hard. Burnout is on the rise. Burnout is up. Every stat is like telling us that people are tired of working. Revenge quitting is the nom du jour. Why did I say that in French?
It's like, it was the Swiss Alps got you thinking French.
Right. I don't speak French. That could have been wrong. It's the vibe right now. Everyone wants to fantasizes about leaving the workforce, taking a break, doing something completely different, following their passions. And I think also, not to get too existential, but I think the rise of social media over the past decade and a half has shown people that there's so much that you can be and do outside of work.
I want to come back to the social media point because it's interesting, but you're spot on about the rise of burnout. So Gallup in 2024 did a burnout poll. They found 28% of people feel very often or always burned out. That's November 2024. That's basically a permanent 5% increase from pre-COVID, where it was sitting at about 23, and that's stayed since COVID. So clearly there's been this general overall uptick around burnout. Everyone is feeling it. We did an episode on burnout earlier, which I loved, and it said the three main pillars of burnout are exhaustion. You are so tired. You start getting very cynical about your job, like, I hate this job, everything sucks, and you start feeling very ineffective. Like, even if I tried, it wouldn't make a difference. My manager doesn't like me, and those are not good feelings. They're on the rise. I think you're spot on. Like, this is a reaction to this general maybe sense of dread that we're feeling in the workplace more than we had in the past. The social media point is really interesting. Do you think that the idea of remote work, digital nomads has also just given people this idea of man, it would be really nice to just live in Bali and work. And then what if I just didn't work in Bali too and just went there?
Yeah. Well, I think 100%. Not only that, not only just the travel influencers, the lifestyle influencers, but also we've been exposed to really interesting pockets of society.
Yes.
Right? One of my favorite social media accounts right now is a woman who has a voiceover while she makes pottery. And she just talks about random stuff. And I'm just I want to make pottery. That's so cool. It seems soothing.
I have been wondering why there's all these clay pots on your desk. Starting to make sense now.
But no, I think it's I didn't realize that that's something I could do with my spare time. There's so much out there, and it's kind of hitting you in the face every single day. You work a sad 9 to 5 and you could be, training elephants to draw paintings.
Right. Or it's remember when you were a child and you wanted to be a painter?
Yeah.
And now you sell B2B SaaS? Move to France. Grab a paintbrush. This could be you.
And I think that it's so appealing to be I just want to break. I want to break from my traditional life. And I don't think that's unique to where we are right now.
And it's interesting. This is making me think of the breaks you would have in your first 18 years. You would be in second grade for 9 months. You would have this mini sabbatical over the summer of 3 months of play and exploration. And then you would go back into it. Then there'd be a transition from high school and college. You'd have winter break during a semester. You had these built-in cadences in your life where you could actually zoom out and just have fun, explore, connect the dots, and then you'd go back into it. Then you start working. And for most people, it's 8 to 8, 9 to 5 for 40 years, and then you retire.
Yeah.
At least that's kind of what you're told is going to be your career. And so it's just interesting. You do get into work and the whole motion of your life changes pretty drastically from what you were exposed to earlier.
Yeah, and I think there's two things I want to talk about with regards to the sabbatical specifically.
Yeah.
And there's a few different terms we're going to use. I'd like to define each of them, but because I think it's important, but let's just say sabbatical is like, first, does it actually work to address burnout? And second, like, are you told that taking time off is going to impact your career versus those built-in breaks that you had when you were younger?
Right.
Like, if you take 3 months off, like, how are you going to explain that to recruiters? They're going to think you're a lazy piece of shit. So you have to work, enjoy your 15 days off for the next 40 years, because that's all you're going to get if you want to be a good worker.
Yeah, tough to go to your boss and be like, so in 5th grade, I loved summer break. So thinking about running that back this year, I'll be off 3 months. Like, good luck with that.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the definitions.
Okay.
Because I think this is very important. And I think my advice, and maybe yours does too, changes based on the type of break you're taking.
Yeah.
First is a true sabbatical.
Okay.
So the idea,
say more.
The idea of a sabbatical, based on how I understand it, according to all the research I did, is that your company grants you the ability to do something different for a specific period of time. This can be paid and it can also be unpaid. So, for example, it's most commonly known in academia. So somebody can take a 1-year sabbatical. Let's say a professor takes 1 year off from teaching to do research on XYZ.
Perfect example.
And then they come back and they're back in their same role. That is usually sanctioned by a university. I assume that typically is paid.
Yeah.
Corporates have adopted a similar idea. It's a little shorter on average, but it is paid or unpaid leave designed to give you a break after you've hit a certain milestone. So, for example, Intel has been doing this for many years.
Since 1981.
Since 1981.
Yeah.
Thank you for getting those stats because I didn't remember that. It's like you hit 4 years, you get 4 weeks sabbatical. And you hit 8 years, you get an 8-week sabbatical.
Yep.
And so obviously it's not the same as 1 full year, but that is paid.
The general concept is the same.
Yeah.
Yep.
However, this sounds great. I mean, for us at least.
I'm like,
as an employee.
is Intel hiring?
It sounds amazing. But we have some stats here. HR Brew has done quite a bit of research about sabbaticals. And according to them, only 11% of companies offer sabbatical programs and only 5% are paid sabbatical programs. Means the others are unpaid. So basically, you can take some time off and you have a job when you get back, but we're not going to pay you for the month that you're not working.
Right. They like basically are saying we won't fire you, but we're not going to pay for you to be a dilettante out in Europe or
do whatever you want. The other two things, the other two that I would talk about is like a leave of absence or a hiatus. Those feel shorter term and they feel more specifically designed to address a personal issue. So like if Family Medical Leave Act, for example, is one thing where you legally can take leave to take care of a sick family member. That feels like a leave. That's not really what we're talking about.
Yep.
And then there's the mini retirement or the gap year. This is potentially where you leave your company and you don't have something to come back to. And then you do your year in Switzerland writing your book. And then after your year or your amount of time
you're done with that. You may or may not re-enter the workforce.
You may or may not. And then it's not guaranteed that you have a job when you come back.
Yeah. Okay. I love that breakdown. Let's focus on sabbaticals and mini retirements because I think those are like the most relevant. So sabbaticals, love that you brought up Intel. I want to bring up a few more companies that have these policies that I think are really interesting. This was all shout out to HR Brew. Again, they did some great coverage of this. There's a company called Schneider Electric. They basically have what I would describe as like a 401k match plan, but for a sabbatical. So you opt into their sabbatical program and stay with me here.
Okay.
A little bit of your pay actually gets deducted. So your take-home pay goes down a little bit. The company matches that like they would a 401k, and it goes into a pool. And then once you've built up a big enough pool, they start this program where you can take, it's essentially a sabbatical. They're like totally cool with it, and it's paid out of that pool. So it's a little mix of like you're not making your full salary because you did have to pay in, but they're matching it too, and they're using this as like a way to retain talent, combat burnout. 37 Signals is a company. They make Basecamp, and Jason Fried is one of their founders. Is pretty big online. They do a thing where if you've worked there 3 years, you get 6 weeks paid. You laughed when I said pretty big online.
I was like, wow, okay.
Sorry, that could mean anything.
What a weird thing to say.
He's like a tech founder, so you'll see his stuff on Twitter. I saw that little grin and I was like, dang, what did I say? So 3 years, 6 weeks paid. So kind of similar to the Intel, like once you hit this milestone at the company, they give you time off. One, do you think this is a good idea for the company to have? And then two, like, would you want to take one of these sabbaticals?
Okay, yes, for one. I think that it's just another perk.
Yeah.
And I think that if the, employee pool as a whole values a sabbatical as something that's like interesting to them, and therefore they will stay for extra time, giving, being a productive employee, I love that. The Schneider one is really interesting because it feels like free money. Like, why wouldn't you do that? I don't love that it's like they're saving for you.
Yeah.
Especially, like, I wonder what happens if you leave before that
period. They do pay you out.
They pay you out.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
Including the match?
I don't know about the match.
See, because
Schneider, email us.
Yeah, let us know, because that's a very interesting detail.
Yeah.
But I like that. And I think as long as every employee feels like valued and that they're able to use it and it's not like discouraged for any reason, like I think that's a great idea. Would I want to do one?
Yeah.
Yes, if it was a sabbatical and I didn't have weird FOMO, which I kind of do, like thinking about this, I was like, but I'm going to miss work. Like, what if important things happen without me, which is so dumb. I would want to take
the company would fall apart without you, but yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Take notes, morning. No, but I think like I would love to do that if I had a job to come back to.
Yeah.
I'm too anxious to like leave my job, and maybe like this is something I should work on.
Yeah.
But like I'm too anxious to leave my job and I would be so focused on applying for jobs that I wouldn't be able to write my mystery novel in France.
Well, okay, so this is why I actually like am very bullish on sabbaticals. I think your point about like feeling like you'll come back and like miss out on opportunities or not like have your job FOMO, I think you feel that when you're taking like normal paid time off. Like you take a long vacation that's not like really sanctioned. It's sanctioned because your manager said so. But like, I'm always like, if I took like 2 weeks off, like, am I going to miss something? Like, that doesn't feel good to me. What I like about these companies who are saying like, if you work here 5 years or 4 years at Intel, like this is built into our thing. Like you get 4 weeks. We're going to make you take it almost. Like that to me seems like it's much more sanctioned, and you're going to come back to still having opportunities because they've thought through it. Like they've built this into their plan. So I really do like that. And like, that sounds amazing. Like I really think one of the benefits of this program is one, it's like a reward for sticking around for a long time and seniority. But two, I do think there's this like routine you can get in of working day in and day out where you get really focused on like the micro details. Yeah. And you almost like you don't even understand like maybe how stressed you are. And the ability to like sit back, know your company has sanctioned this, and like have a month or 2 months where you can relax. You can start probably thinking about work a lot differently. You're going to come back refreshed. You're going to come back with new ideas. I think is actually beneficial to the company. The other thing I really like about the sabbatical is when you leave, other people get to step up. And while sometimes you're scared, like, oh, I'm going to leave and people are going to like step up and then I'm not going to be like as needed or wanted. If the company does it effectively, I actually think it's like a pretty cool opportunity for 4 weeks for people to like stretch in to some new roles, some new responsibilities, and also learn in your absence, knowing you can come back and like you'll cover them. So I think if you do it very thoughtfully, this is a really exciting policy, and I think we have to slack Kate Noel.
Hey, we have a new idea. One thing that you said that kind of sparked something for me is the average tenure of millennials is much lower than other generations and Gen Z, of course. But I think that if you have this desire as a company to encourage longevity, this is a very good perk.
100%.
And I would say that going farther than like doing what Intel is doing and saying 4 years, you get 4 weeks, that to me is very enticing, and it will incentivize the behavior that you want, which is for people to stay for longer.
Yep.
So I think that's a really, really good tactic if it's paid. If it's unpaid, I think this is a different, it's like, okay, you're just like allowing me to like,
if it's unpaid,
you're like not going to fire me for taking a break. Like, thanks.
You just have unlimited PTO.
Yeah. But it's not unlimited.
Yeah,
it's not paid.
You have unlimited time off.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have unlimited TO here. It's like, what does that even mean?
Yeah. And we'll be right back after this. Okay, back to the show. So before we kind of dive into like, does this work? I have a question because I'm curious. What would you do with your 4-week sabbatical?
Okay, so this is tough. This may be nerdy, but I've had this dream. If I had a year sabbatical, I'll answer that.
Okay.
If I had a year, I would love to pick like a random topic and see how much of an expert I could become at it. Like I would pick like evolutionary biology, which I know like barely anything about.
Yeah.
I would like go to the Galapagos Islands.
Yeah.
I would read like every book. I'd like email a bunch of experts and just like totally learn about something I don't do in my normal job. To me, that's like really exciting.
Yeah.
And you don't have any constraints of like, I'm not like publishing a book at the end of it. I'm just like learning about something I would never get the chance to dive into that deeply. So that's my dream. I don't know if I could do that in 4 weeks, but if I had a year, catch me at the Galapagos.
That's fun.
What would you do?
I don't know. I asked the question and I was like thinking while you were talking. I wasn't really listening to your answer. I was like, oh shit, he's going to ask me too.
Yeah, he's like, oh man, he took this one serious.
I have no idea.
Okay.
I think that I would, if I had a year, I'd probably spend the first 3 months like doing functionally nothing. I think that would be really beneficial for me. And then I'd figure something out, like a travel, an extended stay in a place. I don't know, learn how to make pasta in Italy, something like that. Like something kind of cheesy, not very eat, pray, love, but like a little.
What about your pots? You could just make a bunch of pottery.
I make a bunch of pottery, exactly. So I don't know. Like, I don't know what I would do. I think that's something that I need to think about.
Yeah. Well, we'll catch the audience up. We'll catch you up when Kaila decides. Yeah. I will say Morning Brew kind of has this a little bit. I did the math. We get a winter break. And it's a little different depending on like what you do at the company because we have to like create newsletters every day. But we got 13, I think, full days off. It was like December 20th through Jan 2nd.
Sure.
So it's like 2 weeks every year. And then we get the summer break over July 4th, which is 1 week. So it's not 4 weeks, but we do actually a pretty good job, I think, of like giving decent extended time off, which I have really appreciated.
Yeah, I like that. And we also do have like unlimited PTO. The thing I like about the forced quote unquote time off is that I know for a fact that nobody else is working.
Exactly.
And so I don't feel the like anxiety of I should just like check my Slack just to see if anybody needs me because I feel like I'm so important, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's good, but I do like the idea of like we're forcing you to leave for a little bit. This is something that is also like industrially related. Like, so there's certain federal requirements for, let's say, mini sabbaticals.
Okay.
For example, in order to prevent like financial fraud, you are required to leave. I think it might be 3 weeks in a row where you cannot check your phone. Like you cannot check, you cannot log on because if something breaks because you're gone, that means
they know you were like cooking the books or
you're
something.
like cooking something. Yeah. So basically like federally required to take 2 weeks in a row off.
Okay.
If you're like a trader or something like that.
How do we convince regulators that Morning Brew is like critical to the global economy and like I could be messing something up? Like I need a break.
Well, we kind of already do that. So that's a little tough. But
it's interesting.
I wonder, like, does a month off work? Like, what is it solving for, and what does it create?
So I'll say Harvard Business Review did a really good breakdown. We'll link it in the show notes where they did a study of like mini sabbaticals, and they had these different categories. The one I want to focus on was called a working holiday, which is exactly what we're describing. They watched people who had a full-time job, and then they did this like, month-long holiday where they were like working on some passion projects. A lot of them initially just like chilled out. Then they started doing more interesting stuff. What they found is most people who did that came right back to their existing job. So I think the fear that if we give people a sabbatical, they're just going to leave, like that hasn't played out in the data. If you're giving it at the right time and they're not fully burned out and hate you, they'll come back. And what they found is they often came back with like a refreshed sense of energy. What I think is really cool is like, take my evolutionary biology example, which like, don't know where that came from, but I could take stuff I learned in that research and like just thinking differently and come back and maybe find ways to apply it here. I do think it's this really awesome opportunity to collect a lot of new dots, bring them back into your role, and then connect them in ways like if we have 200 plus employees at Morning Brew, if we had over the course of several years, 200 people go off, try new things and come back, I guarantee you we'd come up with some really interesting novel ideas and people would be less prone to burnout, more excited about their work. So I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, so it sounds like evolutionary biology for you coming in 2026.
Yes, you heard it here first.
I think that's cool, and I think that I don't know if this is the thing that's on the rise, though. I don't think it's companies offering this is on the rise.
Yeah.
I think it's individuals being like, I'm burnt out, I need to take a break.
Yeah.
That's on the rise, and so I want to talk about that a little bit because first, is taking a year off the solution to burnout? And second, like, is it the right thing you should do in your career to continue on based on everything we were just talking about?
Yeah, because I think exactly what you're saying. A lot of people are like, okay, I'm burned out on my job. I'm exhausted. I'm cynical. I'm ineffective right now. Like, I want out, but I can't just quit. Like, what if that hurts my career? Like, can I just walk away? And so I think this is a really important thing to explore is like, can you take a break without derailing your career? Do you think you can?
Yeah, anecdotally, I do think that you can without derailing your career. Whether it works is a different question entirely. But I actually have like very many close friends around me that have done this recently.
Okay.
So I'd say like 4 or 5 people have taken a year or more off in the last like 2 years, and they've all used it differently. And for example, like my husband took 2 years off, just started work a few months ago. And it's been really interesting to see. Like, I think it was so helpful for him. He was extremely burned out.
Yeah, just like recalibrate your whole life almost.
Yeah, and it was like 2 years off, not working, following passion projects. Like, he learned how to golf. Like, random
He was making
stuff.
a bunch of peppers.
Yeah, it's like random.
They were delicious.
Random stuff that like you wouldn't be able to do if you had a full-time job. And like, not all of his days were used effectively. I know, because I'll be like, what did you do today? But like, overall, I think it was really beneficial. And he came back to work in a very busy time and he's been like grinding, like he's been working really, really hard. And I think if he didn't have that 2-year break, like it would have been really difficult for him. And I think he would be extremely burned out right now.
Yeah.
So I also think it's really important to acknowledge the like financial privilege that's involved there. Like, if you are burnt out and you don't feel like you have the savings or the ability to take some time off, this is like a moot point. Like you're not going to be able to do any of this.
Yep.
And so one of the things I read about is people will basically set time limits. So they'll say, for the next 6 months, I'm going to continue to work and I'm going to save everything I possibly can. I'm going to cut as many expenses as possible. I'm going to live super frugally. And then in 6 months, I'm going to have enough to take 6 months off.
Yep.
And realistically, you could try to negotiate with your company to get unpaid leave for 6 months, but probably you're going to quit and then spend 6 months doing whatever it is that you need to or want to do in order to recover. And then you have there's not that financial anxiety there. And then you look for a job.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably like the way that most people are going about this, is my understanding. I just don't know if 3 months, 6 months, 2 years is enough to necessarily recover from this like feeling of burnout that you have in your classic 9 to 5.
Yeah. And so on that last point in the episode we did in burnout, I can't remember the specific number of months, but I believe it was like about 3 to 6 months. They actually found that like if you remove yourself from a toxic environment, which is likely the cause of burnout, most people, like 90+%, within 3 to 6 months are back to baseline. So I do think you're right. Like if you take time off, you will feel better. It is so interesting. So my wife did this when she was in like insurance consulting.
Okay.
And then was like, I don't like this at all. And she had saved up enough money to take a decent break and she just quit and like relaxed. And I was talking to her last night about in prep for the episode. And she said, just like you were saying, it was so nice to like zoom out and just like get back to like thinking about different things and like following your passions. And unfortunately, I think for most people, they have a job where maybe they don't feel like they can do that. And you forget how powerful that is and how like really rewarding that feeling can be. So I think if you don't like your job and you can save enough money to do an extended break, you should. Like life is short, and the ability to like get back that like childlike sense of wonder, that play, like grow peppers, try a golf startup, like really see what could be out there. And in that case, like maybe you find out that like you're the best pepper grower in the world. You start that business.
Yeah.
Your golf thing like takes off and you really want to do that. But it's this new time in your life where you can like have more possibilities. I would be lying if I said I don't think it hurts your ability to continue growing in your career just because you are taking 6 months off. However, I think if you nail the narrative,
Yeah, exactly.
and particularly if you're trying to pivot, it's not the end of the world, and you got to weigh the pros and cons. But overall, like I think this is like a really exciting trend. In the stats, like Gen Z is doing this more and more. It was 1.7% in 2019. We're doing something like this. It's up to 8% for Gen Z now. So I feel like this is taking off. People are saving up, getting fed up, and wanting to explore more. And I think overall that's good. And if companies are watching this trend, the solution for the company would be to allow a sabbatical like we've talked about, so people don't just like up and quit.
Yeah, I agree with that. For the most part, I think that if you're going to take time off, it can be so beneficial. And if you nail the narrative, it's like that is even better for your career.
Yeah.
Because you're taking time, you're feeling re-energized. The next company you work for, you're going to be like all in, you're going to be excited, you're going to be productive. And you can definitely spin that however you want.
Right. I mean, just on that point, like if you were feeling burnout and you just left your job, but you're still to a new job and you're still exhausted, like you're still tired, you're not going to hit the ground running on that new job. But if like what you're saying, you take an actual time off, you nail that narrative. When you start that new job, you're actually going to be like in a perfect position to succeed.
Yeah, I agree. And so in terms of like tactics that I think that when I am discussing my anxieties around what it would look like if I took a gap year or time off. Yeah. I think that I would squander it. You know what I mean?
I would fumble the bag.
I would fumble it. And I think that it's like so based on that anxiety of myself, I would give yourself, let's say you've decided a sabbatical. Okay. You're gonna go back to your job, you think, in a year. This is crazy. Nobody's actually doing this, but whatever. In a year, you're going back to your job. You have 1 year, you know it. It's timed. I would give myself 3 months with zero pressure. Yeah. Like if I spend, I mean, I would probably delete my Instagram for this reason, but if I spend 3 hours a day on Instagram and then the rest of the time, like watching Top Chef, it's my 3 months. Fine. It's my throwaway time. Yep. Like, especially if I'm feeling burnt out, this is my time to rot, you know, like be an amoeba if you need to. Then you got to get your ass up and work, as Kim Kardashian would say. Obviously, I'm joking. But I think like after that 3 months or whatever time period you've given yourself, 3 weeks even, it's like, okay, what is my purpose here? Why do I want to take a sabbatical? Why am I taking time off? What is it about my current life that is dissatisfying or whatever? So for me, again, I identified that I have no idea what I would do with this time. So I'd probably try a bunch of new hobbies. Yeah. I'd probably try to be social. I'd try to like become a more active member of my community. Like that's something I feel like I'm too tired to go to a meeting at the end of the day, you know? And so I would probably try to like reintegrate into society and do all those things after my 3 months of rotting. Yeah. And then, you know, that way I feel like I've not ruined, quote unquote, this opportunity. What are some tactics that you have?
Yeah, I mean, from the company perspective, I think Morning Brew explicitly should give a sabbatical at your 4-year anniversary, because
that's soon for us.
It's me and Kayla's 4-year anniversary. By the time you listen to this, it already passed. Yeah. No, realistically, I think a company policy of some sort of sabbatical, I think, is really interesting to me. And, you know, it doesn't need to be 8 weeks. It could be, but I do like Morning Brew's like 1 week off. Everyone's off, it recharges. I really like that idea. From a employee perspective, like someone listening to this is like, okay, I'm really interested in this idea. Like, what should I do? I do like this idea of, if you can't necessarily take a year off, like what is it about these adult gap years that are really exciting for people? And it is like exploring new hobbies. It's like actually getting relaxed and opening your mind to new like possibilities. And can you find a way to like get that without taking a whole year off. Maybe it is like being a little more intentional about taking 2 weeks off, paid time, and like going to do something radically different. It's just, I don't know, like this gets me really excited because I do realize, I feel like I'm blessed in my role where I do get to do a lot of different things. So I don't feel this like overwhelming urge to do this myself, but I know a lot of people who just like feel a little stuck. And I think we often think we have to stay on like climb the corporate ladder. We can't take any time off. And it looks like in the stats, like you're going to be fine. And it's just going to be so rewarding to actually like step out and do something new. So I don't have really any good advice besides like this to me is something that you personally should think about, whether it's finding a way to implement this in your current role, whether it's taking an adult gap year for 6 months and leaving, whether it's, finding a way to get a sabbatical at your company. There's something here that is really exciting to me.
Yeah, I'm going to push back a little because I think that like saying like sabbatical and 2 weeks are like, oh, that's what you could do. I think the benefit of a sabbatical is breaking your routine. And I think it's hard to get out of it and then get back into it after 2 weeks.
100%. And that's what is like challenging is unless your company is like sanctioning this, you just don't have those motions where they're going to give you that opportunity. Yep. It's like, what, you only 5% do like this paid?
Yeah.
So it's really, really rare to end up at a company that would allow you to do this. So I wish there was a way to find it that could integrate into your existing life.
My last tip is actually a plug.
Oh.
So one of the things we kind of glossed over, but I think is very, very important, is the fact that this is financially very difficult to accomplish.
100%.
And so if you are interested in looking at what a mini retirement would require, I do recommend the Money with Katie Wealth Planner.
Oh, nice.
So I've actually spent a lot of time in my like real full-time job working with the Money with Katie team and on their wealth planner specifically. I'll give you like a little like top line trick for full-time retirement. So take a look at that. It's called the 2025 Wealth Planner. I think it's fantastic. But for retirement, my little tip, if you are looking at how much money you need to retire full-time for the rest of your life, it's all like asterisk, 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 whatever. Take your annual spend, assuming you're going to continue at that rate and you're not going to lifestyle creep and increase how much you spend, multiply it by 25. That is how much money you need if you spend the same amount every year to retire without running out of money at some X year.
Yep.
So basically, an example, let's say you spend $5,000 a month. That means you spend $60,000 a year. 60,000 times 25, you would need $1.5 million in investments to retire and maintain your current spending.
Yeah.
With mini retirements, that's much lower. So you actually don't need all that money to spend a year off. You can pull from that. It will impact when you can retire fully, but that's a fair trade-off, I think.
Yeah.
So that's my last tip. I know I could talk about this for another like 45 minutes. So I won't.
This is a personal finance podcast.
But
now.
I think it's really, really important because you can't do this. You can't talk about this without talking about the finances.
Well, and I wholeheartedly agree. And the last thing I'll say, which I think is a really interesting point, is I think when we envision our career, we think we, go to high school or go to college, and then we work, and we work pretty much consistently until we're 65, and then we retire and we don't do anything. And what I love about this idea is it's just like a reimagining of what your career might look like, which might be for 5 years, I'm doing this. I take a 6-month break. I pivot. I go over here. I work 3 years. I do a mini retirement. I start volunteering more. I find a new passion project. I go work there. Like it is just this ability to think of your career very like non-linearly, which I think is really exciting. And even if you don't like it, it's nice to understand what other possibilities are out there.
Yeah. And if we already think we're going to retire or we're going to work until we die and there's like no retirement possibility for us, we might as well push it up.
You might as well get that retirement when you're, can move around a little bit more.
When you're 30. Yeah. Why not?
So, all right. Looks like we're going to like Ibiza together. I don't like.
I do not want.
Where are we going?
I do not want my mini retirement to be in Ibiza.
I want to go to Ibiza. All right. Well, let us know where you want to spend your mini retirement. Per my last email at morningbrew.com. We'd love to hear your ideas. With that being said, let's roll the credits.
Let's do it.
Our producer is Michaela Heck.
Our technical director is Uchenna Ogu.
Seth Lopis is our motion designer.
And our chief content officer is Devin Emery.
This show is a production of Morning Brew.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Happy early retirement.
Adult gap years, sabbaticals, mini retirements, they are on the rise.
#slay.
Except don't say Okay, great. Thanks for that meaningful contribution, Kyle.